Okay, so let me take this opportunity to welcome all of you to this meeting today. This webinar is basically for the release of a Hindi and Urdu version of our report, which we had released in August in English, called Human Lives Matter, Comparative Study of Human Rights and Development in Jammu and Kashmir and Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. Um, So this report had received a very good response internationally once we had released it. It's basically a comparative report on what is happening in terms of human rights in in Jammu and Kashmir, and what is happening in Pakistan occupied Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. And so once we had released it, the kind of information that we had put out was something unique. We were trying to fill up a gap that existed as far as the comparative study of these two regions are concerned, which is basically originally part of the whole state of Jammu and Kashmir, which in 1947 was occupied by Pakistan. Some part of it was occupied by Pakistan. And this report, just want to tell you a little bit about this report before we go on. I go on and introduce the speakers for the day, and I'll ask Advocate Kumar Vaidyanathan, who is Law and Society Alliance's Secretary General, to introduce the organization that is hosting the event today. uh, so basically, this territory of Jammu and Kashmir has seen a whole lot of contestation between India and Pakistan since 1947. And both the countries have traveled a long way in the last 7 odd decades of their independence. And the territory across the line of control that divides Kashmir into Pakistan and India, and these contestations have resulted in at least 3 wars and one minimum sector-related battle between India and Pakistan. Uh, and so what we undertook during the study was to analyze the commitment that both the governments in India and Pakistan have shown towards this territory, and what is the amount of money that they spend on each of these regions, and and what is the sort of human rights, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and all that aspects that uh, kind of show the amount of importance that the respective governments have given to this region. So that is what we wanted to. That is the gap that we wanted to fill up. There was a real gap that was felt. There were reports, but they actually focused specifically on a certain issues like say health facilities, or say human right issues. But there was no comprehensive study that was done both on human rights, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and also on development indices that internationally that are looked at. So that is the gap that we try to fill up. There is nothing, there was no, what do you call it, as some kind of a secret data that we unearthed. Basically, it's all available in the public domain, but only thing is there was a need to put them together by reading the open source intelligence that is available on these issues. And that is what we have done in this report. Now, today, what we are going to do is we are going to be releasing the Hindi and the Urdu version, and I welcome all of you to this event. We have a great panel of speakers today. Uh, I will introduce them in a little bit in detail at a later stage, but we have Ajmer Sharif's Gaddi Nishan Haji Syed Salman Chisti ji, who's joining us from Ajmer today. The Hurz is starting in Ajmer from tomorrow. He's busy in the preparations for that event, but still he has agreed to come and join us today. I thank him for joining us here. Then we have Arif Ajakia ji, who is a human rights activist from Pakistan, and he focuses mainly on human rights in Punjab, in Pakistan occupied Kashmir and Gilgit Baltistan. Currently, he is in London, and he has joined us from London. I thank him for that. Then we have Faiz Diju. Um, he's a Kashmiri activist. He's yet to join. I think he too had some technical issues initially. I'm just waiting for him to join, but I think he will join in at a later stage very soon. Then we have Sonam Mahajan, who's a public figure and a celebrity on the social media, and she's also a geopolitical commentator. Thank you, Sonam, for joining. And we'll have Sushil Panditji. As I earlier said, he's currently attending to a television event, and he'll be joining in just a few minutes. When he joins, I'll introduce all the speakers before they speak. So thank you so much. I welcome all of you wholeheartedly on behalf of Law and Society Alliance and on behalf of Defense Capital, who are the host today. And to introduce the two hosts today, I ask Secretary General of Law and Society Alliance, Advocate Kumar Vaidyanathan, who is joining us from Mumbai, to do the honors by introducing the two hosts of the day. Kumarji.
Thank you, Bipinji. A warm welcome to one and all. Law and Society Alliance, it is an independent Indian national growth organization providing legal and knowledge intervention on the issues that need study and research, determining an analysis and prolonged groundwork matters such as national security, human rights, terrorism, narcotics, legal reforms, legislative reforms, financial inclusion, economic growth, and all walks of human activity aimed at development, modern standard of living, and cultural moorings of humanism. Law Society also carries out policy interventions and advocacy on matters of national importance, campaigns on social and national issues for generating, influencing, and sustaining public opinions and sentiments, groundwork for direct intervention to help society overcome its obstacles in its growth and attaining national development objectives for promoting social harmony and peace. To achieve these objectives, Law and Society Alliance organizes strategically designed webinars and the policymakers, corporate stakeholders, and activists gather to debate topics thoroughly leading to meaningful outcomes. Closed-door discussions on specific topics where no hold barred open exchange and views and ideas are encouraged so that real issues and tangible solutions are worked out by who's who connected in these discussions and open house panel discussions that are reportable by the media. Law Society Alliance also publishes books, white papers, policy papers, research papers, monographs, issue briefs, confidential reports, etc. Law Society Alliance has published the study report on human lives matter, and today we are in the program of releasing the report on Urdu as well as Hindi. Our another next host, that is Defense Capital, co-host, it tracks the business and politics of India's growing defense, homeland security, aerospace and maritime trade and markets to provide you the most accurate quality news at the right time. The site Defense Capital has more than 3 lakh hits and is counting. Defense Capital has also come out with month-to-month magazines which are fabulous, and it covers the entire events in the defense arena. Law and Society Alliance and Defense Capital have been conducting various such seminars, and some of the seminars they're revisiting One China policy, non-military options for retrieving Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, data as a weapon, and so on. So I welcome you all, and thank you, participants, and over to you, Bipinji, for further event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kumar. Thank you for this introduction of the hosts of the day. So I just want to release the event today. Release the reports that we have brought out. I'll first show you the English reports cover, so you will know what I'm talking about. I hope you're able to see this report at this point in time. So this is the Human Lives Matter English report, which we brought out in August. So the Hindi version of the report is here. So we have just released it today, and we have added a few chapters in this report, additionally more than what we had done in the English report. So similarly, we have this Urdu report also here, which we are releasing today. In fact, Aji Syed Salman Chishti ji was supposed to release it, I believe he had some technical issues and he has logged out. What we'll do is we'll wait for him to join, but we'll move on with the program. I will rather now request Arif Ajakia ji to keep his views on the subject of the day, which is a panel discussion on rhetoric versus reality, comparing human rights and development in Jammu and Kashmir and Pakistan occupied Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. I'll give the first opportunity to Arif Ajakia ji to speak. Arif ji, you can unmute yourself and speak. Thank you so much.
Namaste and Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak in this event of Jammu and Kashmir human rights issues. Before going to the current human rights situation, I would like to say something about the historical perspective of the issue. Pakistan and India, they were partitioned in 1947 for a purpose. And the purpose was to keep the potential superpowers of future, India and China, occupied. And for that, Pakistan was created. Now, only creation of Pakistan was not enough. So they had to create an issue which keeps them occupied. And that was Jammu and Kashmir. Now, Jammu and Kashmir was legally annexed to India by its legal custodian Maharaja Hari Singh and Muslim leader Sheikh Abdullah. Because Jammu and Kashmir had Muslim majority, so Muslim leader Sheikh Abdullah's consensus was there with Maharaja Hari Singh, and they joined India through accession treaty with Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. Now, Pakistan invaded Kashmir, and then we know all what's happening since last 7 decades in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Now it's union territory. This is bread and butter of Pakistan army, because we have a huge army in Pakistan that takes more than 50% of our budget. Now, what is the need of an army for a country which was created from India, which had no enemies around? So why need such a huge army? Because they give us a churan, we call it churan in Pakistan, that Kashmir is Pakistan's territory and we have to take it back. So we need such a huge army, we need arsenal like missiles and atom bomb and the aircrafts and navy and all these things. So it is basically bread and butter of Pakistan army. Now, coming to human rights issues, I am attending United Nations Human Rights Council session since 1994. And the biggest group of people that come to United Nations to speak on any human rights issues out of 200 plus countries, it is Kashmiris. And Kashmiris from both parts come and speak about human rights situations, mostly against India, that it is occupied by India and Indian army, 600,000 people, army personnel are in Kashmir and they are violating human rights issues. Millions of dollars are spent only on this campaign. I have lived for 20 years in Belgium, which is capital of European Union, so there is European Parliament. And I used to go there for human rights issues of Pakistan, because Pakistan is a country with the worst record of human rights. Like there is a military operation going on in Sindh, Balochistan and KPK. So I used to speak about this, but there the biggest investment by any group, it is again Pakistani-backed Kashmiris. They spend millions of dollars on lobbying, on spreading fake human rights issues and so on. So this is bread and butter of Pakistan army, Pakistan's military bureaucracy and their agents who come to Europe, for example, to Brussels and Geneva, stay in five-star hotels with their families and enjoy their time there, and they get TADA of thousands of dollars just to appear there and spread fake news about Indian Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Now, my question is that Pakistan, a country that violates basic human rights of every Pakistani, do they have any moral ground to speak about human rights situation of any other country, any part of India? In Jammu and Kashmir of Pakistan, which is mostly, I think that the POK is Jammu part of India and Gilgit-Baltistan is part of Ladakh. There is no human rights. There are no human rights in this part of world. I will give you a small example that on 26th January, we saw that some people, they threw away Indian flag. And until now, there is nobody arrested or thing happened. But in Kashmir, there was a man, Tanvir Ahmed. A few months back, he in Muzaffarabad, there was a flag of Pakistan. He went up, he took out flag and he did not throw it away. Respectfully, he gave it to police people that this is your flag. Don't wave it here in Kashmir. Kashmir is not yours. That man, Tanvir Ahmed, has disappeared since then. Disappeared in a sense that he is abducted by Pakistan's brutal ISI. And nobody knows what is happening to him. He has no human rights. What did he do? Jammu and Kashmir is part of India, occupied by Pakistan. Now, if he removed Pakistani flag, did not humiliate it, what's so wrong about it? Now, coming to another aspect, that electricity supplied to entire province of Punjab. Punjab has more than 50% population of Pakistan. Electricity supplied to Punjab comes from POK, Mangla Dam and all this that they are producing electricity. But the people of Pakistan occupied Kashmir get most expensive electricity. Entire Gilgit-Baltistan is mortgaged to China. In a way, it is sold to China. So basically, the people of Gilgit-Baltistan and POK are living in a living hell like a slave. The demography of POK and Gilgit-Baltistan is totally changed. When we come to Srinagar, we listen that people speak in Kashmiri language, people wear Kashmiri dress, they eat Kashmiri food. But in POK and Gilgit-Baltistan, we hardly hear anybody speaking Kashmiri. It is Punjabi that is speaking because Punjabis are dominating in Pakistan army and Pakistan's ruling oligarchy. So Punjabi is the basic language of POK and Gilgit-Baltistan. We will see shalwar kurta of Punjabi dress everywhere in POK and Gilgit-Baltistan. We don't see Kashmiri food very much in POK and Gilgit-Baltistan. So entire demography of the region has been changed. While we see that in Indian Union Territory of Kashmir and Ladakh, they have their traditional dresses, their traditions, their culture, their language, their food, which exists there and which is practiced there, and nobody stops them to do that. There is no try ever in last 70 years, nobody from Indian government has tried to change the demography of that state. People are enjoying their human rights. Kashmiri students that they get chances to study in universities across India. Now, in last IPL, we saw that Abdul Samad, a Kashmiri boy, was playing from Hyderabad. So Kashmiris are enjoying their human rights in India, but in Pakistan, the story is different. I can go on for hours on this topic because I've spent my last 26 years in this field. But I think there are so many speakers and especially speakers from India, Sushil Pandit ji, Sonam Mahajan ji, Salman Chishti ji, and so on. They can put more light to this issue. Thank you for inviting.
Thank you, Ajakia ji, for bringing out this issue quite clearly and very forcefully. Basically, whatever you have talked about regarding education, health, and freedom of speech and freedom of religion, demographics. All these subjects are covered in this report that we have brought out. Before I move on to the next speaker, I just want to inform our participants today that you can post your questions on the chat box, which will be taken up and asked. If you can just mention the name of the speaker to whom you want to pose the question and write down the question in the chat box, we will take it up at the end of all the speakers speaking today. I'll move on to Haji Syed Salman Chisti ji from Ajmer Sharif. He's the Gadi Nishan of Ajmer Sharif in Rajasthan. He is also the chairman of the Chisti Foundation. He is a globally popular religious leader and voice for human rights and peace. I welcome him and I thank him for joining. He had joined earlier, but in between he had some technical issues and he has joined back. In fact, we wanted to ask him to bless the reports that we are bringing out today and to release it by orally declaring that the reports are released today. Since he has joined back, I just want to show the two reports once again to the audience. Before I ask him to do the honors. This is the report that we have brought out in Hindi. We had brought out in English earlier. This is the Hindi translation with some additional chapters that we have added to it. And this is the Urdu report that we have brought out. We'll be making this available publicly on Law and Society Alliance's website, and it is also available for sales at rupees 100. Chisti Saab, I want to ask you to bless this report, release it by orally declaring it as to be released, and also place your views and comments right now. Thank you, Haji Saab.
Adab, greeting of peace and salam to everybody here, all the esteemed panels, and especially Naren Saab, who's been from time and again organizing such forums where diverse views, whether it is human rights violations in China or other parts of the world, or when you talk about Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and many other such issues with the platform you have been brought it up. And today, I think since you have released a very detailed studies, so we extend our congratulations and to the release of the virtual release of the reports of the that you have meticulously. I'm sure that all your research work that has been put together, all the volunteers and experts that have come together to put forth the facts would certainly make a difference in identifying the fictitious stories and the narration that come across and knowing the true facts and the ways and lifestyles of people, especially in Jammu and Kashmir region, and also the situation that the people of Pakistan occupied Kashmir and Gilgit, Baltistan, all those areas that are facing. So we extend our greetings and also your support towards the release of this book, as we are in the post-COVID scenario, so everything is virtually. So this is a virtual launch or the release of the reports. At the same time, from Ajmer Sharif, we'd like to extend our duas and blessings, of course, to the good work for raising the voices, the unheard voices, towards such platform which can be amplified from time and when you talk about the Kashmir, especially in Kashmir and in the interiors, I would like to share a very pleasant observance that we have seen in Ajmer Sharif, that we've been born and brought up here, serving from last 800 years as at the maqam of the patron saint of South Asia, Hazrat Khaja Moinuddin Chishti, radiallahu anhuma. And every year during winter, I would say I've spoken about the Bakarwal, the Kashmiri people from the interior lands, that how fondly and how pleasantly they come every year to Ajmer Dargah Sharif. And they are very poor people, not have the means to go on the annual pilgrimage, but when they come to Ajmer Sharif, they feel really that this is one of the important journey that they have taken, and they come with their children, with their families, and they are so happy when they share, and such a beautiful tradition that they carry, which is the Kashmiri spiritual and the Sufi tradition, that how they address us also is into a very deep state of understanding, that we know that the culture, the tradition, the language, the vocabulary, everything is so deeply rooted into the spiritual traditions of Kashmir region, whether it is the Sufis or the Rishis or the Shaivite traditions. Even today, when they come to Ajmer Dargah Sharif, they address us not as Sayyids or Hazrat, they call us as Rishis. So the vocabulary itself is so deeply rooted into the spiritual traditions of the region that the people there, in the villages, in the interior lands, they still follow the same traditions, and they are not devoid, or they are not being kind of pushed away from their roots, as Arif Saab was mentioning in his talk about the beauty and the beautiful aspect of the Kashmiri traditions, which are so well observed, practiced, and lived by all the Kashmir citizens in Jammu and Kashmir. I think these are the human aspect of the lifestyle that often get missing when the conflicts or the so-called man-made or politically created conflicts are imposed upon the region. I think this is for external reasons, when we saw that there are vested interests, not only of the region, but even outside the South Asia region. These are the interests that kind of amplify or kind of always fueling these kind of conflicts. So we have to be open to receiving the voices from the region, especially from the interiors. As I said, that this winter is very different because of the COVID. We are not having much of those Bakarwals and all those communities of the Kashmiris who used to visit, and because of the heavy snowfall that happens, and the region is completely locked under snow. So a lot of them move towards Delhi, and they come to Ajmer Sharif and stay here for almost about half a month or a month here with their families, and they feel so much at peace when they're here. With at the sacred aspect of Khaja Gharib Nawaz. So I think the spiritual longing and belonging must always be a priority when we are dealing with the cultural traditions. And I think that has been a very, very welcoming and a gift, a sacred gift to the people in Jammu and Kashmir, uh, this the adhyatmic जिंदगी जो है हमारे देश की, भारत देश की, when you talk about the spiritual aspect or the importance of spirituality into the life, I think that's really give us that insight into understanding, even if there are situations of conflicts of then we have to look at that aspect, that people, how they become contempt of their own self and the spiritual understanding that they have, and that's what brings the smiles and happiness, even if their lives have been completely trampled or shattered because of vested interest, whether it's across the border, or whether there are some of their own people who have been kind of swayed away or kind of brainwashed to create extremism or terrorist activities within those villages or regions. I think it is important to highlight these aspects. I'm sure the report do consist about the spiritual aspect of the region, which we would love to have a copy in our library in Ajmer Sharif, which we can definitely share with a lot of people who are visiting regularly. With these closing remarks, we extend our greetings again to everybody, especially the forum, and continue to engage in such dialogues and have the insight to the conflicts, and thus amplify those voices. As I remember very clearly in the last meeting that we had virtually again, the situation which was discussed about Uyghurs, and how they have been put into the authorities in China. And likewise, I think if we keep the solution to such conflicts and situations would certainly be made aware to the international community, especially the United Nations. 2 years back, we were in Geneva. We talked about the human rights annual summit there, and again, time and again we talked about the Kashmir issue because, as Ashraf has mentioned again, it is a lot of people go and start demonstrating. Maybe they're on the payrolls, kind of from the establishment, and which have they personally, we don't think that they have any ground, any personal or a ground reality. They have any understanding of that. It's just that they're there on a leisure trip, maybe that they can amplify such kind of issues to just for the particular time being when the sessions are going on. So I think that's something which has to be highlighted on the ground level. If our people who are there on those who interact regularly with such people who, like, for example, which I gave about the people who visit Ajmer Sharif, or other people who are into the interiors, if we have a way of to communicate and bring out their ways, their words, their way of lifestyle to the international community, that would really help in opinion building and also the global policymakers, especially with the human rights organizations and the United Nations, inshallah. So that's our duas from Ajmer Sharif as the Urs is coming. So 809 Urs Mubarak to everybody through the platform. And our duas for this 2021 is that may our world be more safer, more healthier, and more dignified with respect to each and every human life. And that's our duas from the land of India and Ajmer Sharif. Salam and greetings to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chisti Saab, for these wonderful words. And the issues that you brought out regarding the religious freedom that people in Kashmir enjoy. They travel across the country to visit shrines. They also practice their own religions and also their culture. The culture is still intact. So that is not the case as far as POK is concerned. That aspect has been brought out in our report. I will definitely share the report with you in hard copy. I'll send it across to you. It will definitely be a good addition to your library there. And thank you for being here, and thank you for blessing our event and the report. I now move
Thank you. Thank you. All the best. It's time for Azan, so I would like to take your leave, and we continue to pray and be in touch in serving. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. So now I'll move on to our next speaker, as a very important voice in Kashmir affairs. Faiz Diju. Have I pronounced your name correctly, Diju? I make this mistake every time, but if I have made a mistake, you'll have to forgive me for this. I'm quite weak at this kind of, this talent is lacking. I'll certainly try and get this talent, acquire this talent very soon. Faiz Diju is a social activist and founder host of the very popular talk show in Kashmir called Darbar. He's also the chairman of the Sunrise in Kashmir, which is an NGO which works on the ground in Kashmir, which he founded actually. He's also an important, commentator on various issues connected with Kashmir affairs. We have Sushil Panditji also on the panel, and Sonam who will be speaking later. I welcome both of you to the show, to the event. Diju, the time is yours. Can you just
okay?
Please your comments.
To start off with, I am used to people mispronouncing my name, so it's perfectly all right. It's Faiz. We have a famous poet called Faiz Ahmad Faiz, so that makes it easier. It's Faiz Diju.
Faiz Diju. I got it right.
Absolutely.
Faiz Diju.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Now I'll this happens with me too. A lot of people.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. That's perfectly all right. Coming to my second point, before speaking anything, I would quickly like to reply to some of the points which our fellow speaker, our colleague, our friend from Ajmer Sharif just spoke about Kashmir. Is it like, we guys are together, coming together, trying to portray Kashmir as a very poor, helpless people kind of a thing? No, it's not like that. Kashmir is not only about that. Let me please correct you. He mentioned that people come from Kashmir with families and they are very poor, they are very helpless. No, hello, listen, what world are we living in? There is nobody poor in Kashmir. Let me correct it. if there is somebody from Kashmir who is flying down or he is traveling with his children, with his family to Ajmer Sharif, make no mistake, he's not poor. Okay. And Kashmir is not just Bakarwals. To start off with, when you talk about Kashmir and you start with Bakarwals, Kashmir is more about Bakarwals. Okay. Bakarwal is one of our communities. There are brothers, but it's just one community. Kashmir is not about Bakarwals. Kashmir is not about helpless and poor people. And then they come to Ajmer Sharif. Of course, yes, we go to any shrine, we go to any religious place, we find peace. So there is nothing special about Kashmiris coming to Ajmer because they find peace and then they stay there for half a month or 1 month because they have nowhere else to go. It's not like that. So I just wanted to correct this narrative immediately. So coming back to the point, first of all, Bipendra, I'm really glad you do these talk shows. You give us these platforms where we speak. At times, it gives me a vent to take out my anger. But again, the point is like I think somewhere somehow down the lane we're giving more importance to Pakistan. It's a third-rate country. Why are you giving so much importance to Pakistan now that we have all the big heads, where Mr. Arif here, where Mr. Sushil Pandit here, we have other lady here. We all come here and then we have to talk about Pakistan. No, we have our own problems. Let us focus on our own things. Let's talk about Kashmir. You want to talk about human rights? Let's talk about human rights in Kashmir. Let's talk about the youth. You talk about youth, you tell us that youth, ye hai ji, youth, wo hai ji, youth, ye karega, youth, wo karega. But at the end of the day, what are we doing for our youth? और अभी ये अजमेर शरीफ के हमारे ये बात कर रहे थे, did he once spoke about that कि ये जो यहाँ कश्मीर में he was talking about Kashmir, he was talking. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah, you are audible, Faiz. Yeah.
Okay, my voice was just rebounding to me. Okay, so he was talking about Kashmir. He's so concerned about Kashmir. Did he just once use the statement, any such statement like the Kashmiri youth which is involved in drugs, we're heading towards Punjab. जैसे पंजाब खत्म हो गया ना, वैसे ही कश्मीर भी खत्म हो जाएगा. ऐसे ही अगर हालात चलते रहे ना, the same way we are going, Kashmir will be, the youth will be over because everybody, most of the youth is involved in drugs. Not even once did he use.
I think Faiz has lost his connection. Let's see if he can just rejoin us. Yeah, he's back. Yeah. Faiz, are you able to speak? Yeah, please go ahead. We're not able to hear you. Faiz, can you hear us? Can't hear you, boss. Can't hear you.
Is he mute?
No, he's not mute. His mic is open, but okay, I think his connection is very bad.
We can't hear you also now.
Okay, are you able to hear me now, sir?
Yeah, hearing.
Yeah, technology is both a boon and a bane. So it sometimes comes in the way of events also. Okay. So what I'm going to do is we'll move on to the next speaker, and once Diju is back, we'll ask him to speak. Sonam Mahajan is our next speaker. I will just introduce her a little bit so that she can. Sonam is an independent activist and a thinker who is deeply invested in women's rights. geopolitics and social reforms. Her unadulterated takes on in the Indian subcontinent politics have a huge readership across social media platforms. And Sonam is also a prominent face on mainstream Indian and Pakistani media outfits, including television channel debates and all. So, Sonam, the time is yours, please.
Thank you, Bibendruji, for inviting me. To start with, to give some sort of a background to the viewers who are with us right now, the issue of Jammu and Kashmir has always been the bone of contention between Pakistan and India. Even though I can't really figure out as to why there is a conflict, the other gentleman on the panel, Mr. Faiz, I saw that he was deeply upset about the fact that we are talking about Pakistan on this particular discussion. But if we have to really talk about the rhetoric versus reality, then we need to bring up the entity which is the problematic factor in Kashmir, and that's Pakistan. Ever since Pakistan has taken over a part of Jammu and Kashmir, they've been constantly on an attack mode. Of course, they can't fight a war with our army because they've lost every single war that they've fought with our army. So they are basically, the Pakistan is now basically resorting to a proxy war. And that's the whole problem in Kashmir. And I don't understand, how do we keep Pakistan out of this debate when the whole debate on POK, POJK, and Kashmir, the problematic factor itself is Pakistan. Now, talking about the reality, I don't think we can compare Srinagar or a Jammu to Amirpur at all. You know, it will be like comparing Mumbai or New Delhi to some maybe tier 4, tier 5 provincial town in India. That's the condition of Pakistan. I was also going through your report, and I would like to highlight some data because nothing speaks better than numbers. We talk about the education, talk about the budget of POJK, it is 173 million. We talk about JNK, it is 1.55 billion. We have 12 universities, they don't even have half of them. The literacy rate is kind of close, but I'm not sure if the data in the public domain is really verified. We talk about the health budget. We have 618 million as our health budget, and this data is in US dollars. We talk about Pakistan occupied JNK, it's 62 million, which is negligible. Talk about hospitals, we have 5,534, and I'm sure this includes the nursing homes and small health centers also. On the other hand, we talk about the total number of hospitals in POJK, it's 73. So you can now imagine the doctor to patient ratio also. The infant mortality rate also is more than double in POJK. Why is this happening? This is happening because the Constitution of Pakistan doesn't even recognize POJK as its territory. Pakistan has definitely occupied 30% of our territory, but then I think ever since that has happened, Pakistan has just been treating this area just like it treats Balochistan. It is mostly for resource thievery. You talk about making it a hotbed of terrorism. Who eventually is losing? It's the average Kashmiri. When you use a Kashmiri's territory to basically fan terrorism across the border, so how is it helping the Kashmiri, whether it is in India or it is in Pakistan occupied JNK? This entire war is about religion. Let's not make any mistake and say that this is some sort of a political issue. Others might like to sugarcoat it, but I wouldn't, because I'm a minority from JNK, and I have been a first-hand victim of Islamic terrorism. And let's not make any mistake, the only problem in the state of JNK, in the Union Territory of JNK today, is Islamic radicalization. From the time that our Kashmiri Pandit brothers, they were ousted from Kashmir in lakhs, you know, we are still standing at the same position, even though we have our army in Kashmir today. But unless we really diagnose this problem, how do we tackle it? If we just be living in that oblivion that okay, Kashmir mein kuch nahi hai. I understand there are only 2 to 3 districts which are problematic, but let's not say that there is no problem there. Now the thing is, even though it's a religious war, it is being portrayed as Pakistan as some sort of a freedom struggle. Now, when you look at the double standards of Pakistan, now Baloch are, most of them are Sunni Muslims. They're still fighting for freedom from Pakistan because even their territory is being used for resource thievery and exploitation, and gross human rights violations like organ harvesting also happen in Balochistan. Now, talking about Balochistan, I don't think the Sunni Muslims have any religious conflict with Pakistan as such, but they still want freedom from Pakistan. On the other hand, we have these section of Kashmiris in, Kashmir, India, where they feel that, okay, probably when we go ahead with Pakistan, it is going to be all hunky-dory, pata nahi hame kya kya mil jayega. These people are not trying to learn from the history. They're not realizing that आप पाकिस्तान में आप देखें, आज तक लोगों के पास बिजली नहीं है पीओजेके में, आप उनका जो उनकी टेरिटरी है उसको पूरा का पूरा आप इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं कश्मीरियों के बच्चे मरवाने के लिए, उनका आप उनका इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, आपने उनको कोई रिसोर्सेज नहीं दे रखे. ऑन द अदर हैंड पाकिस्तान ट्राइज एंड सेज कि जो इंडिया में जो है बहुत तशद्दुद आर्मी करती है, जो वहां की आवाम है उन पे, but Pakistan has no answer to the fact that because at one point, simultaneously you're maintaining a position that the Indian government is a fascist government and there is no access to the mainstream media in Indian Kashmir. And on the other hand, you claim to have all the data from the Indian Kashmir. How are these two things possible? Either there is access to media or there is no access to media. And when Pakistan says that our sources are international media, then you kind of have to accept that it is self-explanatory that the international media does have access to Kashmir. If we really had something to hide here, just like Pakistan does in Balochistan, there is hardly any internet connectivity in Balochistan, and Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir because they have something to hide there. On the other hand, we also have representation. This is a webinar, and we still have representation from Kashmir because we really have nothing to hide. If we talk about facts, we know that the facts are on our side. And just because a section of Kashmiris backed by Pakistan Army's terrorist agenda, if they feel that they want freedom from India just because New Delhi is being ruled by infidels, as they call us kafirs, that's not good enough for you to get any sort of freedom, because that's no yardstick for freedom in the first place. You want to be a territory of Pakistan, which itself is a colony of China today. You look at the condition of Pakistan, CPEC, which was supposed to generate jobs for the Pakistani citizens. Today, Pakistan has exceeded many of its strategic assets to China just because it is not able to pay back their debts. So the debt trap that was laid by China in Pakistan has completely fallen into it because as a country, Pakistan doesn't have much to lose. And when it comes to Kashmir, they have all the money in the world to fund. And when it comes to international forums, you see Imran Khan talking about how the international organizations should come to Pakistan's rescue and, let them do away with whatever debts they need to pay to others. A country which is completely destroyed, a country which has no policy apart from terror policy as the state policy, a country which is fast becoming the friend of Turkey, which again is an isolated country today. You talk about Turkey, it has no goodwill in the West. It has locked horns with all its neighbors, and that's Pakistan's new friend. So I feel that an average Kashmiri really needs to sit down and figure out as to what exactly does a Kashmiri Muslim want. You want to go ahead with Pakistan just because you have a religious connection there, but you don't have a future there. On the other hand, Mr. Faiz was saying that we need to talk about the problems of a common Kashmiri. What are these common problems? I need to know. Your problem is that you want freedom from India. You want to hoist the flags of ISIS. That's your problem. You talk about employment rate. JNK has good enough employment rate, at least a lot better than POJK. We can always work on it. I think the Indian Army has also started a number of. Sorry.
Are you these questions? Are
No,
you
I'm not
asking me
asking
these
you. I'm
questions,
giving
or
my
it's your
point of
assumption?
view. You can
Okay,
counter
then
it
it's
later.
fine.
I would really appreciate if you don't cut me
Then
in
it's
between.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
always
yeah,
answer
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes. So we see that Kashmiri Muslims, they line up and they want to join the Indian Army. We see that every time वहाँ पे कश्मीर में आर्मी की भर्ती होती है तो जो कश्मीरी नौजवान होते हैं ये लाइनों में लगे रहते हैं. अगर किसी देश की आर्मी इतनी खराब है तो आप उसको ज्वाइन नहीं करना चाहेंगे. और Indian army is not only considered one of the best in the world, not because it's a huge army or we have one of the largest forces. It's also because it is a force with morals. We have seen every time a Kashmiri is stranded, it's the Indian army which goes to their rescue first. Of course, I for one wouldn't deny that there are no violations. Any territory in the world where we have a military rule, इक्का दुक्का वहां पे ऐसे लोग होंगे जो कुछ गलत भी करते होंगे. But what matters the most is that our policy as a country has always been more of a healing policy. We are not a rogue country like Pakistan who would like to exploit or hurt our own citizens. जब भी कोई इस तरह की चीजें सामने आई हैं, the Indian Army as an institution has always come to the rescue of the victim. हमने बहुत सारे cases देखे भी हैं. Can you say the same for Pakistan? You go to Pakistan, the next day you have no identity. We already have a good enough case in front of us. We see JNK में जो publications हैं, you see we have Dogri, we have Kashmiri, we have Urdu, we have Punjabi. On the other hand, you see there is a clear language imposition in POJK. It's Urdu all over. So ये linguistic आप politics भी देखें पाकिस्तान की, they have absolutely no regard for the Kashmiri identity. इनको कुछ नहीं मालूम है. They just want to exploit the vulnerable people on this side, and I really feel pity for these vulnerable people because they are feeling vulnerable for no reason. I mean, India is your country. You know that you can prosper uh, when you're with India, and you can see that how the rest of the country is doing. As a citizen of JNK, I feel bad that I have to carry the baggage of somebody from my state who doesn't want to be at peace. Why should I, as a Hindu minority, suffer because some people in Kashmir they want so-called azadi with ISIS flags in their hands? That's not acceptable to me. And when Pakistan talks about the narrative of an average Kashmiri, on the World Forum, it only wants to bring out the narrative of the separatist forces who are funded by them. Why doesn't the Pakistani establishment want a Kashmiri Pandit or somebody from Jammu, for that matter, a Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, doesn't matter? Why don't they want that version to come out? This entire rhetoric versus reality thing is only going to unfold when we be honest to ourselves and call things as they are. I can go on about this. I don't know if I'm making too much sense to people who are listening to me, but respecting the timeline and wanting myself to hear Mr. Sushil Pandit, I think I would just pass it on now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sonam. Thank you for this. Thank you for highlighting what's there in the report too, because that would have certainly aroused the curiosity of all the participants, and they would want to take a look at this report. Thank you so much for that. And most of your points are very valid, but I think we need to give Faiz an opportunity to place his views. And I'm liking it in the sense that there is some sort of a debate that is happening among the speakers, which is pretty good. It brings out whole lot of quality content from this debate. Faiz, the time is yours. You can take about 3 to 4 minutes to conclude your remarks so that we'll go on to the next speaker, Sushil Panditji. He's already waiting for us. Yeah.
I would like to reply to the lady, Miss Mahajan here, where she supposedly is trying to make her points. I don't know what are these points based on. The topic that I see here is rhetoric versus reality. I think Ms. Mahajan is more inclined towards the rhetoric. I don't even know when was the last time she has visited this part of our country, because I've seen her repeatedly saying my country, my country. Let me correct madam here that it is our country. It is not my country. It is not your country. It is our country. Just like it is my country, it's your country. Okay. So she's more inclined towards the rhetoric. A normal Kashmiri, what does a normal Kashmiri want? A normal Kashmiri wants freedom. Who says so? A normal Kashmiri wants to flare the ISI's flag. Who said so? Gone are those days. Gone are the days when we want to focus on radicalization. Today is the time when we want to pay our attention to counter radicalization, not de-radicalization. De-radicalization is gone. You're wasting your time if you think you can go and de-radicalize people. You have to be proactive, not reactive. Work on the measures on counter radicalization. These things that Ms. Mahajan is repeatedly saying that Kashmiri ye chahta hai, Kashmiri wo chahta hai, nahi. एक आम कश्मीरी एक पीसफुल जिंदगी चाहता है, एक जिंदगी चाहता है जहां वो सुबह जाए, अपना काम करे, शाम को 10 पैसे कमा के वापस घर आए, बीवी बच्चों के साथ टाइम स्पेंड करे, फैमिली के साथ आउटिंग पे जाए, वीकेंड प्लान करे, शॉपिंग करे, वो सारी चीजें करे जो एक जम्मू में बैठा इंसान कर रहा है, दिल्ली में बैठा इंसान कर रहा है. हाँ, there are always sections in every community. There are always sections in every community. कश्मीर में भी ऐसे लोग होंगे जो पाकिस्तान चाहते होंगे, तो वो तो कितने सालों से बोल रहे हैं ना. What then? आप एक छोटे से सेक्शन के लिए इस पूरे कश्मीर को जनरलाइज करोगे, इस पूरे कश्मीर को वो दिखाओगे कि ये जी मजलूम कश्मीरी है. बहुत हो गया जी मजलूम कश्मीरी. कश्मीरी मजलूम नहीं है. कश्मीरी मजलूम नहीं है. इतने टाइम से कश्मीर बंद है ना, चाहे पहले 370 हुआ, उसके बाद कोविड हुआ, पौने 2 साल हो गए कश्मीरी को बंद होते हुए. छोटे से छोटा कारोबारी और बड़े से बड़ा कारोबारी सब बंद है. कोई पैसा नहीं, कोई काम नहीं.
We can't hear you, Diju.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm telling you, 2 साल से कश्मीर बंद है. Almost 2 साल से कश्मीर बंद है. There's no business. There's nothing doing. There's no economy. क्या आपने आज तक सुना कि कोई कश्मीरी भूख से मरा? क्या आपने ये सुना कि किसी के घर में शाम को चूल्हा नहीं जला? So stop playing rhetoric again and again. मजलूम कश्मीरी, कश्मीर आजादी चाहता है, कश्मीर ISIS का फ्लैग चाहता है. नहीं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. होंगे कुछ लोग किसी सोसाइटी में, किसी पॉकेट में, किसी हॉट स्पॉट पे. एक जनरल कश्मीरी की बात करें, वो एक नॉर्मल पीसफुल लाइफ चाहता है. यहाँ के जो बच्चे हैं वो खेलना चाहते हैं. They want to indulge in sports. They want to excel their talent. They want to hone their skills. ठीक है, बाहर जाके, बाहर के स्टेट्स में, बाहर के बच्चों के साथ compete करना चाहते हैं, नेशनल चैंपियनशिप्स में पार्टिसिपेट करना चाहते हैं, इंटरनेशनल चैंपियनशिप्स में पार्टिसिपेट करना चाहते हैं. हमारी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के साथ ऐसे बच्चे जुड़े हैं. दे आर स्मॉल किड्स बट दे आर आइंग ऑन ओलंपिक्स. दे वांट टू गो इनटू ओलंपिक्स. दे डोंट वांट टू हैव अ फ्लैग. आई एम रियली सॉरी. ये जो ओपिनियंस है ना, ओपिनियंस, दे वर मोर ऑफ assumptions. आई थिंक दे वर नॉट opinions. So I would request the madam to stop playing these assumptions and these rhetorics. Let us face the reality. Reality ये है कि एक peaceful जिंदगी चाहिए. बस जैसे आपको चाहिए ना, जहां पे आप बैठे हैं, हमको भी चाहिए, और हमारा वो हक है. ह्यूमन राइट्स की बात करते हो ना, वो है राइट्स. इंटरनेट की बात करते हो, मेरा इंटरनेट इसलिए नहीं चल रहा है, मेरा वीडियो इसलिए ब्लॉक हो रहा है, बार बार आप इसलिए इरिटेट हो रहे हो, और मैं भी इरिटेट हो रहा हूं क्योंकि मैं अभी 2G नेटवर्क पे हूं. हर महीने में एयरटेल को पैसा देता हूं 4G का. जो मेरा प्लान है वो 4G का है, मगर चल रहा है 2G. ठीक है, इसलिए मेरा फोन बार बार कटता है, इसलिए आपको मेरी आवाज बार बार सुनाई नहीं दे रही है. ह्यूमन राइट्स की बात करते हो ना, राइट्स की बात करो. क्यों यहां का बच्चा डिप्राइव होगा? पौने 2 साल हो गए यहां के बच्चे को घर में बैठे हुए. वो स्कूल भूल गया. यहां के बच्चे को पता ही नहीं है स्कूल क्या होता है. यहां के बच्चे को बोलो मार्च से स्कूल शुरू होने वाला है, ठीक है, उसका चेहरे का रंग चेंज हो गया. अच्छा, अब स्कूल भी जाना है, बिकॉज ही इज ब्लडी फॉरगॉटन. ही इज फॉरगॉटन कि मैं कोई स्कूल में भी पढ़ता था. इट्स बीन 2 years. ये है राइट्स. आप ह्यूमन राइट्स की बात करते हो. ह्यूमन राइट्स इज नॉट ओनली अबाउट पाकिस्तान आया, उसने मार दिया. To hell with Pakistan. I don't even give a toss to Pakistan or what Pakistan does or what their proxies does. It doesn't matter to me. I will look on my own country. I will look at my own state. I don't give a damn about Pakistan, what Pakistan thinks or what Pakistan does. I have strong faith on my country. I have strong faith on my army, and I am very sure कि वो उनको रोक के उधर ही रखेंगे जहां है और रास्ता दिखाएंगे उनको, जहां से आए हैं वापस भेज देंगे. इतना भरोसा है मेरे को अपनी आर्मी पे और अपनी कंट्री पे. But let us look at ourselves. You talk about human rights and human rights, rhetoric and reality. Rhetoric and reality versus rhetoric versus reality पे बात कर रहे हो ना, reality की बात करो. इस प्रोग्राम में आके rhetoric मत बोलो. I think that's enough. Please carry on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Vipindraji?
Yeah, I'll give you an opportunity, Som. So Sushil is waiting for a long time. After
Sure,
Sushil
sure. ठीक है.
makes his comments, then I'll come back to you. Huh?
Sure.
Can't hear you, Bipindraji. Unmute yourself.
Okay. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
I think it got clicked by mistake. Okay. Sushil ji is a social activist and a public commentator, and he's a very important voice on Kashmir issues. And he's a very prominent and well-renowned Kashmiri scholar. He's also a human rights activist and a development activist. He's based in Delhi, and he's a very popular personality on television chat shows on Kashmir. I request Sushil ji to speak. Everybody else, please mute yourself so that there is no disturbance when Sushil ji is speaking.
Thank you, Bipindraji. Namaskars to everyone. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to connect with all of you, especially my esteemed panel of speakers. And I was considerably enlightened listening to all of you. Thank you so much for your contribution. And thank you for sharing this report with me, Bipindraji. I've gone through the English version that you had sent me earlier. While I quite appreciate your interest in how Pakistan is doing in that part of Jammu and Kashmir, which they have come to occupy for more than 70 years now, I sometimes find that these comparisons are a little odious because it is like comparing India and Pakistan. These two are incomparable entities. Comparing Pakistan with India is dignifying Pakistan, is somewhere even legitimizing Pakistan as a legitimate state, as a legitimate entity. Why do I say this? Because Pakistan came into existence on the basis of a principle, an idea, a thought, which is more exclusive, which is rooted in incompatibility. It asserted that Muslims cannot live with Hindus and therefore they need a separate state. They could not explain then as to how Muslims lived with Hindus in this country for more than 700-800 years, almost 1,000 years. And now that we were ushering in democracy and there is going to be a popular rule that Muslims cannot live with Hindus, what they meant was that Muslims can only live with Hindus as autocratic rulers, as oppressors, as invaders. And now that democracy was going to be ushered in, they suddenly start asserting that Muslims and Hindus are two different nations and can't live together. To start with, this principle of incompatibility and exclusiveness for Islam is what brought Pakistan into being. The intolerance of non-Muslims. And this intolerance, this exclusivity just didn't stop at non-Muslims. It carried on. And they kept defining themselves in narrower and narrower terms each succeeding day, which is why they broke up in 71. And which is why they are in the process of breaking up again. So it is an anomalous state founded on a completely pernicious, unsustainable idea, and is trying to go to pieces by destabilizing its neighbors. Well, Pakistan is openly and unabashedly what it is. Therefore, I blame my own country and my own leadership for the current state. Pakistan occupied Kashmir would not have happened if my Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru had not unilaterally declared a ceasefire on 1st January 1949 and literally ceded 38% of Jammu Kashmir's territory to Pakistan. We did this. This was a unilateral ceasefire when our army was driving the Pakistan army out and had already liberated more than 60% of Jammu and Kashmir. So we ceded what we today call Pakistan occupied Jammu Kashmir. And then we knew how Pakistan achieved the state of Pakistan and also grabbed a large portion of Jammu and Kashmir and what it did with the minorities there. As if the massacres in Punjab, in Northwest Frontier Province, in Karachi, in Hyderabad, Sindh, in Mirpur were not enough. We saw the massacres of Sikhs and Hindus in Punch, in Muzaffarabad, in Kotli, in Bimbar. We saw how brutal they were with Hindus and Sikhs in the territories they controlled. And yet, in 1950, can you imagine? The same Prime Minister signed a pact with the Pakistani Prime Minister Liaquat Ali called Nehru-Liaquat Pact, where we handed over the remaining minorities to Pakistan as hostages. And we said by signing that pact that now Pakistan is responsible for the fate of those minorities. Knowing that Pakistan came into being by negation of these minorities and as non-Muslims, as incompatible to Islam. And what it did with them in the preceding years. Knowing all that, we handed over these hapless, unarmed, innocent civilians to the mercy of a jihadi state called Pakistan. Now, because it was intolerant of plurality, which is what we represent, India represents plurality of everything. Plurality of languages, plurality of ethnicities, plurality of cultures, food habits, even plurality of gods. Pakistan's singular exclusivity starts from the God itself and it rams it down to the language. Why did it lose Bangladesh? Because it was intolerant of Bangla and Bengalis. It wanted to impose Urdu to the banishment of Bengali. And it had some kind of a racial hatred for a short-heighted, dark-skinned, almost malnourished, emaciated Bengali. Looked down upon him, fleeced him, used East Pakistan as a colony to impoverish them and enrich West Pakistan, and denied them their legitimate political share in power when they won the elections fair and square. That's why they lost Bangladesh. So after being done with Hindus and Sikhs, they have turned to the plurality within Islam. And what they have done to Shias is borne out by your own report. Shias of Gilgit-Baltistan. Shias, as you hear these days, of Quetta in the Hazaras. And what it does with Balochs, what it has done with Sindhis. And when Arif Bhai was saying that, look at what Punjabis are doing by overrunning the territories inhabited by other ethnicities, whether it is Pakistan occupied Jammu Kashmir, whether it is Gilgit, Baltistan, Skardu, even Northwest Frontier Province, what they've done to Karachi. I completely agree with him, but they are not even true Punjabis. Look what they have done to their own language. Last time there was a Lahore Lit Fest, a literature festival in the city of Lahore. Not a single Punjabi book was seen or talked about. Their poet laureate, who was a Punjabi, Faiz Ahmad Faiz, after whom one of our esteemed panelists is named with great pride, did not write in Punjabi. He was a Punjabi. That is how they are bent upon killing their own language. To speak in Punjabi in the Provincial Assembly of Punjab is banned. Do you know this? If a legislator in a huff or in an emotionally charged state starts speaking inadvertently in Punjabi, the fellow legislators appeal to the speaker to expunge his remarks because he spoke in Punjabi. This is what they do to their mother tongues. This is what they do to their native languages. Incidentally, this is what Kashmir has done to Kashmiri. So we are talking about an anomalous state, a diseased state of mind, which has done with its minorities what everyone knows, and now it has turned upon its Muslim populations and resorted to what is called Takfiri Islam. Now it is sitting in judgment over who's the right Muslim and who's the wrong kind of Muslim. So Ahmadiyas are declared non-Muslims. And Shias, of course, are Kafirs. And even within Sunnis, the Barelvis have to be bombed out of existence, blown to smithereens because of shirk. So Pakistan is busy destroying itself. And the saying goes, when the enemy is busy destroying itself, don't disturb that enemy. So while our interest is very legitimate in what they are doing to themselves and doing to our brethren in the territories that we willingly ceded to them, and incidentally were very happy to turn LOC into a border if Pakistan was willing to agree. It's a matter of shame, Bipindraji, I must tell you, the proposal with Pakistan was always on the table that let's convert the LOC into border. It is the Pakistan's reluctance. Because what they say is that while the portion of Jammu Kashmir we already have, we have it. By converting it into border, what are you giving us as concession? Nothing, we already have it. We want more from you. So that is what has come in the way. Otherwise, we would have ceded this territory long time back. Thank God we have a change in government and a change of mindset today that we are at least talking about reclaiming LOC. And what lies beyond that? So what Pakistan does completely stands to reason. They are a genocidal state. They committed genocides after genocides, starting with East Bengal and then Balochistan and Sindh, now Gilgit-Baltistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. They even committed a genocide in our part of Kashmir by driving us out using their proxies. It is a genocidal state. So let's not compare how many doctors they have per 1,000 population or how many universities they have. These comparisons are between civilized states. And there can be poor states and there can be rich states. So these comparisons sometimes are odious. What we must compare is the mindset, is the ideology, is the very foundation on which a state is built. And there it is a genocidal state. It is an anti-civilization state. It is an anti-human state. It is a criminal enterprise. And it should be dismantled at the earliest to save humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sushilji. Thank you for that very eloquently put. I think you have hit all the right chords and the right nails on the head. Thank you so much. I want to invite Sonam to make her remarks which she wanted to make after Diju had spoken. Sonam, unmute yourself, please.
I said, firstly, to correct him, I never said Mazloom Kashmiri. In fact, I was trying to make a point which is absolutely in the opposite direction. How can a Kashmiri be Mazloom when J&K gets 10% of central funds when it has only 1% of India's population? How can a Kashmiri be Mazloom when a Kashmiri gets 8 times more money from the Indian government when compared with the citizens of other states of India? So Kashmiri can never be a Mazloom, according to me. And if Diju Sahab, as he claims, is such a patriotic Indian and he's on the side of the reality and not on the rhetoric, then I think for starters, he should at least start calling out people within his community who have embarked on a journey of Islamic radicalization. That's something he should start with. Otherwise, I don't think you're doing any favor by simply using symbolic expressions like, oh, India is my country, Indian army is my army. I'm not saying it's not your army. Of course, you are as Indian as I am, but then you should also show that in your behavior when you fail to call out people within your community who are being the problematic factor in Kashmir. And you keep saying, we want this, we want that, hame bhi jobs chahiye, hame bhi falana chahiye, dhikana chahiye. Every citizen of India has more or less, a middle class citizen of India has more or less the same kind of needs. But we need to talk about what is preventing you from fetching all this. The problem is radicalization, and radicalization. You're talking about having a bad connectivity, internet connectivity in Kashmir without talking about its context. As a Jammuite, I should feel worse because in Jammu there is no terrorism problem also, but our entire Dogra community is suffering because of what unfolds in Kashmir every now and then. We are suffering because our children, our younger generations do not have internet access during this entire lockdown when you're supposed to work from home. Kashmir at least has a terrorism problem. Why the people of Jammu are paying the price? Why are we doing it? So I think Kashmiris, I agree with Mr. Diju. I don't think Kashmiris are victims at all. They need to introspect. The Kashmiri Muslim needs to introspect and figure out as to what does he want from life, and if he wants something productive from life, what he needs to start with is calling out people within his community for what they are doing to do a great disservice to this nation. Otherwise, you can keep harping about how you are a patriot and how you like your army, but if you fail to call out the bad elements within your community, then I don't think you're serious about this entire issue. Of course, Pakistan is an external factor, but we cannot rule out Pakistan's participation, active and self-professed participation in Kashmir. We will keep talking about it till the time Pakistan keeps talking about our internal territories. We will keep talking about them. It doesn't mean that Pakistan is of great importance to us, but it is also important on the part of an average Indian to keep busting Pakistan's propaganda. It's not that we give them a lot of importance. Of course, it's a failed state. India and Pakistan, like I said, they are incomparable. Like I said, you can't compare a Srinagar and a Jammu with a city in POJK, because that's like any other small town in India. We can't even call them cities. But I'm really shocked at the hypocrisy of Mr. Diju, who's really upset with the fact that, okay, an average Kashmiri is both Amir, he has all the affluence in the world, then what are you fighting for? And one more thing that you must ask yourself, what came to the valley first, terrorism or the army? AFSPA came there because 5 lakh people were driven out of there. And if you say there is a small section, I'm sorry, a small section cannot drive out 5 lakh people from a city. Kashmiri Pandits, like they left for Jammu or for different cities in the country overnight. Lakhs of them. Would they do it because one of their neighbors is saying that, okay, this is time for jihad, you leave without your without your women, आप अपनी औरतें छोड़ जाएं हमारे लिए, आप निकल जाएं, यहाँ पे निजाम मुस्तफा बनेगा? You think it would have happened because one of the neighbors said it? It was a consolidative movement. There were many people involved in it who are still shamefully they enjoy the security from the Indian state. I mean, that's something our government has to figure out, whether a Gilani or a Gilani or an Andrabi really needs the Indian security. For that matter, even our mainstream politicians like Mehbooba Mufti and Abdullah, who don't think even twice before before demonizing our army and our law enforcement forces in general. But then they have the security of the same law enforcement agencies. If the Indian agencies and Indian law enforcement forces are not the forces to be relied on, then why take their security? Leave it at the first instance.
Yeah. Sonam, thank you. Thank you so much. We'll go on to the question and answer session right now. There is a question for Arif Bhai from one of our participants who is also a research associate of Law and Society Alliance, Hitesh Tikku. He's asking, can there be any peace at all between India and Pakistan as long as the state of Pakistan is physically intact and in the control and hands of Pakistan Army?
Thank you. Before going to reply the question, I would like to comment on a couple of things that were said by my co-panelists. First of all, I agree with Sushil Pandit ji that Punjabi language does not exist in Pakistan in written form, because Punjabi is written in Gurmukhi and there is not a single Punjabi in Pakistan who can read Gurmukhi. They try to write Punjabi in Arabic scripture. So I agree with him. And Urdu is not mother tongue of anyone in Pakistan, but it is a bonding factor. So that was imposed on different provinces of Pakistan. And again, I agree with Sushil Pandit ji that this country is on self-destruction mode, Pakistan, and it should be dismantled, and we should all help getting it dismantled very soon, because we, the Pakistanis, are suffering more than anyone else. Coming to the point of Faiz Bhai, that he says that in Kashmir, our children are not, they don't know how to go to school and this and that. We live in London. My children are studying online since last 1 year. It's a global pandemic issue. It is not only restricted to Kashmir only. We are also jobless in London. The economy of UK is getting down. So don't worry, brother, we all are facing this globally. Now coming to the point of the question about peace between India and Pakistan. No, there will not be. If you want to hear clear, no, there will not be, because Pakistan does not want. If there is a peace between India and Pakistan, what would be the reason of existence of Pakistan army? There is no reason to exist, because India still have a reason that China is there. We need such a huge army. But why Pakistan needs a huge army? Because India is our enemy. Say no. Pakistan, as I said earlier in my statement, that the bread and butter of Pakistan army is enmity with India in our madrasas, because every Muslim child of Pakistan goes to madrasa. The first thing we are taught is that हिंदू से नफरत करो, हिंदू जहन्नम में जाएगा, तुम जन्नत में जाओगे, इंडिया तुम्हारा दुश्मन है. ये हर पाकिस्तानी को बचपन से सिखाया जाता है. जब आप अपने बच्चों को ये सोच दे के बड़ा करेंगे तो आप कैसे उम्मीद कर सकते हैं कि देयर विल बी पीस बिटवीन इंडिया एंड पाकिस्तान?
Thank you, Arif ji, for those comments. There is a question for Sushil Pandit ji. Uh, it is again asked by Hitesh Tiku, who's a research associate of LSA. The question is, do you think Kashmiri Pandits will ever be rehabilitated, and do they hold any future in Kashmir as long as the state of Pakistan is physically intact and in the hands of Pakistan Army? I mean, almost the second part of the question is this, almost the same as the first one. So, Sushil ji, you want to answer? Unmute yourself, Sushil ji. You're on mute.
If you want me to answer this question as an astrologer, then I'm afraid I'm not in a position to tell you if and when we will go back to Kashmir. But if you want to ask for my desire, I would love to go back and reclaim my land and start all over again, rebuilding my community there. I wouldn't like to waste a single day, given the right kind of circumstances. And what are those circumstances? Those circumstances are reversal of my genocide. We are fighting two states today simultaneously. One is the state of Pakistan, which committed this genocide through its proxies, through its ideology of hate, hating Hindus, hating civilizational continuity of this country, this land. And the other state is the Indian state, which is in denial of my genocide, which wants to whitewash it, ignore it, paper over it, and move on. Without acknowledging this genocide, without delivering justice, without bringing to book the perpetrators, without retrieving my immovable property grabbed, and without giving me my share of the valley so that I could go there and rebuild myself. So currently I am engaged with an existential battle, battling not one but two states and nuclear powered states. One is bent upon destroying me and another is willing to put me on stake for this ephemeral, elusive peace with the other state. Is trying to appease jihad, is trying to win hearts and minds instead of getting into the battle mode and start retrieving lost ground. So currently things look a little distant and difficult, but we shall achieve it. We owe it to our children because we were the trust keepers of this legacy, this land, this tradition. And I don't want to die without handing it over to my children as I had received it when I was born. Thank you.
Thank you, Sushil ji. Wonderful. It's a wonderfully put idea and thought. There's a question for Arif ji once again. The question is, why do some attacks that happen on individual Muslims being considered as a attack on Islam itself, and this kind of a phenomenon is seen all over the world? This is asked by Dhruv Sham Bimal, who is one of the participants in the event today.
There are some people, they say that Muslims cannot live with other religions and they start fighting with them. But when Muslims have no enemies from other religions, then they fight with each other. We have divisions within Islam, like Sushil Bhai also said that Barelvi, Devbandi, Ahle Hadith, Shia, Sunni, Aga Khani, Ahmadiyas, we declare each other kafir. So there is a division between Islam, Muslims, and then people like me are kafir for them, are Ghaddar for them. Karima Baloch, a Muslim girl, was killed in Canada because she spoke for Baloch missing person. She spoke for human rights of Balochistan. So yeah, we Muslims are exploitators in other people's view, but I will say that we are victims also. I mean, common Muslim, not non-jihadis, which are in majority. But again, in Kashmir also, jihadis are not in majority. Majority is peaceful Kashmiris, but they are hostage to those few with gun and power. So same with Muslims of Pakistan and other Muslim countries. We peaceful, peace-loving people are hostage to people who hold the power. Exploitative forces like Punjabi army in Pakistan, like House of Saud in Saudi Arabia, like Iranian regime. The regimes of Islamic countries, you don't find democracy there because the regimes have used Islam and Ummah Churan everywhere, and then you will find Muslims suffering more than anyone else.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you very much. So there is a question for Sonam Mahajan from Dhruv. The question is, he wants to know the difference. Yes.
Bipindra, do I get a chance to reply to Her Majesty?
Did you speaking?
Yes. Do I get a chance to reply to Her Majesty, the Chief Justice of Nowhere, Miss Sonam Mahajan? Do I get a chance to reply to her?
Thank you so much for your certificates, but I must tell you, I don't need any.
Arya, please let us not get into this. One-on-one.
No, you can let him speak. Otherwise, tomorrow he will say that these Indians did not let me speak. Also, of course,
Bipindra,
he would.
I think you should mute
this into another thing.
It's my time to speak, and she cannot speak, and she cannot cut me.
Let us show.
Sure, there's no need to get all that worked up.
Respect to each other, please.
Yeah. It's not a court. It's just a discussion. Yeah.
Sonam and Diju, please hold on, hold your horses. Diju, you know that I give opportunity to everybody to speak, and I let them speak their mind. But personal attacks, we should both Sonam and Diju, we should avoid. I would have intervened earlier, but
absolutely.
Please don't.
You will not have anybody to call me hypocrite on your stage next time.
No, that is fine. I think you have already, both of you have already done, the kind of damage that you need to do to your, please. I think we should stop there. I think we should stop here. Let's go ahead and complete this event. We can discuss it later, Diju, isn't it? Sonam, we'll discuss it later. Okay. So let us move on to the next question. There is a question for Sonam that I want to ask. Sonam,
she should stop and she issuing certificates because she is capable enough.
You are still continuing the same thing. I thought we are moving on, isn't it? We are moving on. Please hold on. Hold your horses. You will get an opportunity to speak.
Please move on.
Yeah. Sonam, the question is there a difference between the kind of religious conflict that exists in Kashmir and the other parts of India? That is the question Dhruv has asked. If you want to respond to that, it's a question directly asked to you. So please do respond.
Yeah, Bipindra, first of all, I take an objection to you saying that both of us have done some damage to the sanctity of the forum. If that is the case, I would like to gracefully leave. Because I did not speak until you allowed me. I did not speak over anybody else.
There's no point in getting offended, I think, isn't it? Please.
No, but I wouldn't like to be put on the same pedestal as Mr. Diju, of course.
Okay, let us just leave it here and move on with the show. Let us talk later about it. Let us complete.
No, I don't need to speak about anything. I don't need to.
If you want to answer the question, Sonam, please. I think both of you have attacked each other personally. I have noticed it. I want to intervene, but I just kept quiet because
I have not attacked anybody. I have not attacked anybody.
Please, let us not debate this right now. Let us complete the show, right? Let us complete.
I am civilized. You said don't speak. I did not.
Well, both of you just stop right now. Let us not do this. Okay? Let us not do this. Sonam, there is a question addressed to you by one of the participants. In respect to that participant, let us answer him first. We'll discuss this later. The three of us will sit here and discuss this when the event is over. Okay.
I don't have to discuss anything. Thank you.
Right. It's up to you.
Yeah.
It's up to you. If you don't
Yeah.
want to answer,
Same here.
it's fine.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, fine. So we'll move on to the next question then. So, okay, there is a question to, what is the way forward for restoration of normalcy in your view in Jammu and Kashmir? Sushil ji, you want to take up that question and answer it?
Yes, thank you. I think the way forward would start with being honest in acknowledging what is happening in Kashmir. In Kashmir, what happened 30 years ago was nothing less than a genocide committed through violent ethnic cleansing of Kashmiri Pandits. What is happening in Kashmir is nothing but jihad, naked, unabashed jihad. It is not wayward boys. It is not about disenchantment and alienation. This is not about lack of economic opportunities. It is not about development. It is about an assault, a civilizational assault to tear us up, to break us up. So long as we are insisting on prevaricating about it, lying about it to ourselves and to the rest of the world, we will not be able to even begin the process of healing and solutions. So to start with, acknowledge that we are faced with a jihad, acknowledge that they succeeded in a genocide of Hindus in Kashmir, acknowledge that you have a responsibility to deliver justice, and therefore, instead of winning the hearts and minds of those who committed this genocide, please try them and make sure that they face the consequences of their crimes. Because as a democratic polity, we owe it to the victims and survivors. And then have a policy, have a detailed plan for the reversal of this genocide. We need a share of the valley where we need to build ourselves up. And once we are able to achieve this, what we will have in Kashmir is a geostrategic foothold in the valley, which is today completely lost, but for our army and security forces. We need to have feet on ground in Kashmir. And those feet on ground will be of people living there, not in camps, in porta cabins, not all alone leaving their families behind in safety, but as a community. And we need to enlarge that space, and we need to fight this menace as opposed to co-opting them, winning them over, bribing them, and buying peace. Unless all this that we have pursued in the last 30 years, this hypocrisy, this make-believe, this drama, this lie is abandoned, and we truly get down to fighting this challenge thrown at us, we can't even think of discussing normalcy in Kashmir. Part of the abnormalcy is our unwillingness to acknowledge what we are facing in Kashmir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sushilji. There is a question for Arifji. I think this will be the last question we'll take up for the day. The question is that we have a problem between India and Pakistan on the border issue. Basically, the factor of development, at least in terms of the mindset of the people, will it kind of help in see a starting point for peace at any point in time? That is the question for Arif ji.
Well, again, to achieve peace, there has to be will from both parts, and if I don't see a will from Pakistan, because India has tried time and again to achieve peace with Pakistan by giving chances to Pakistan, even after 26/11, when Pakistani terrorists organized by Pakistan's ISI attacked Mumbai. Still, India did not retaliate, and still Pakistani singers were coming to sing in India. Pakistani cricketers were coming, and India gave every chance to Pakistan, but Pakistan never wanted a peace. As again, I will say that I have already said in my statement that Pakistan does not want peace with India. If there is a peace with India, we don't need such a massive army. Now, our army takes away 1,700 Arab rupees every year from our national budget. This is only for defensive expenses. Pensions and all these things are apart. So more than 50-60% from our national budget, it is taken by army. 1.5 or 2% is going to education. 1.5-2% is going to health. So we are, our people are basically slaves of our army, and our army, to keep its hegemony, they don't want to achieve peace with India. Regarding the border issues, you know, there is a long border between India and Pakistan in Punjab and Sindh, but you will never find a clash on those borders. The clashing point is always in LOC. So this is another part of the story, that there is something going on which will not let Pakistan and India achieve peace, because it is not in the interest of Pakistan army.
Absolutely, well put there, Arif bhai. Thank you so much. I want to thank all panelists, starting from Chisti Saab, Arif bhai, Sushil ji, Sonam, and Diju for joining the event. I ask and request our research associate Hitesh to propose a vote of thanks, and after that we'll conclude. In fact, I just have one announcement to make. After this event, we are going to be releasing a report, a similar report on China. China has its subversive activities in India. That is the topic on which we have done research. We'll be releasing that report very soon, sometime in February. I want to invite all of you to join that event. You all will be posted with the details through your mail, emails, and WhatsApp and other messages. You will receive it. I request all of you to join that event too in February. Hitesh, please do propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Bipendra sir, and I would like to thank Mr. Vaidyanathan from LSA to conduct this webinar. And I would like to thank all the panelists and participants for attending this webinar. Very informative, and there were some heated exchanges as well. But I'm glad it didn't go, you know, as far as our 9 p.m. prime time news debates on the TV. So I would like to thank Chisti Saab for his presence and his blessings. It actually means a lot in these troubling times, but unfortunately he had to leave for Azan. Arif Saab, thank you very much for attending. I follow your work keenly, and it's very impressive. Your work on human rights in Pakistan is very commendable, sir. Thank you very much for your time here. Thank you, Sonam Mahajan, for being here. I'm not sure if she's still with us. She is an inspiration to countless men and women of Jammu and Kashmir and the entire country, and we really appreciate her presence here. And lastly, Mr. Sushil Panditji, Namaskar, Panditji. I admire your words and writings, sir, and your efforts to expose the real enemies of India. And you are an inspiration to the entire KP community. And sir, we are very proud of you. Thank you again, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Let's forget the fireworks that happened. I know how to, connect with both of them and make them understand that this was not done. And a healthy relationship is more important than a heated debate. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Sushilji, Arifji, and everybody else who have participated today. I want to recognize the presence of Lieutenant General Patanka, who's a very senior retired Army General. He is always there to guide me and bless me. He is here today. And several other important people are here. I'm not taking individual names now, just for paucity of time. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Have a nice evening, and let's recollect again sometime later on a similar topic, on a similar debate. Thank you so much. Without the fireworks, of course. Thank you so much.
Arif bhai, namaskar.
Namaskar, namaskar. Thank you very much for inviting.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you, Sushil Ji. Hitesh, stay back. Don't go away. Hitesh. Kumar, you please stay back. Huh? Venkat, also stay back. Vijay, if you're able to stay back, stay back. Otherwise, since you're traveling, it's up to your convenience. If you want to stay back, then stay back. Rest all, you're all free to leave. We just want to do an internal meeting, that's all.
There is one Satyaraj Alva joined from Mumbai.
Okay.
He is actually the president or secretary, I suppose, secretary of Labour Law Practitioners Association.
Oh, I
Sorry,
see.
I can't hear you. What are you saying? Just a minute. He's the president.
Kumar.
Labour Law Practitioners Association. Yeah.
What I think is we'll come back and meet again, because maybe tomorrow we'll meet, tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Venkat, is it okay?
I don't have a problem.
Okay, fine. So we'll leave now, because there's something else that has just come up. Want to attend to that? Huh?
Yeah, fine. We'll catch up later.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Bye.